Hopefully you can relate. I have personally really struggled with being an artist and expressing myself in terms of how to communicate that to an audience. And so, for example, when I decided to create my YouTube channel, I went and read a lot, watched different videos on how to create a YouTube channel, how to get views and so on. And what makes a big impression on me is that it's all about putting the audience first and making sure that the audience likes you and is interested in what you have to say. And of course this sounds natural, this sounds logical, and this is for example Gary Vaynerchuk made a distinction between selfish content and service content, speaking about the fact that you have to be fully aware of who you're making the content for and who your audience is and so on. And all the marketing strategies and everything today is centered around figuring out what your audience wants and looking up keywords. There's a ton of SEO tools and plugins to figure out what keywords people are typing, what types of topics they want to hear, and so on and so on and so on. And that's all great. Of course, you should be putting out content that the audience is interested in, that is relevant to the audience. For example, if you're reviewing certain technology, talking on different social topics, of course, you have to figure out what would be most relevant, most useful for the audience, so you can review those projects or products over these ones. And that is all great, but it seems to me that one thing is taken out of the equation and is not being considered. And let's see what this is. So we have you as a content maker. And again, I think there are different types of content makers. I would like to talk about artists, about painters, writers, and so on. In particularly, creating content for YouTube, for any other media, and of course creating art. As you can see, I am a budding artist. I have not had much time to develop my style, and hopefully I'll get more chances in the coming years. And I think that in the case of an artist, having too much consideration of the audience, what the audience wants, might be a very tricky thing. It's one thing to review a technological product, and it's a totally another thing to create art, painting, or, as I said, writing a book, and so on. The problem, of course, is that you are considering how the audience reacts. First of all, why would you consider what the audience wants? You consider what the audience wants because you want something out of the audience. So you want them to like you. Why? Well, I think number one is for financial return. So you want to make money on what you create, which is considerably completely understandable. Of course, you're putting tons of hours in, and you want to sustain yourself. And the other thing is you want respect, recognition, fame. Let's talk about the first thing, because I think is a more basic one. So you create art, but you also want to make money out of it. So therefore, between the art and the audience, money stands in as an intermediary. What is more, the thought of money stands as an intermediary, as a filter of sorts between the initial idea and the execution. So for example, you're painting a painting, and if there is the smallest concern about audience and what the audience wants, then you will be censoring yourself, right? So for example, you want to all of a sudden, as you're painting, because the creative process is very intuitive, at least for me, all of a sudden you want to paint something very provocative, maybe sexual or on some other level. And if that was if you thought in your head that you're creating a product that has to be sold, you might stop yourself and censor yourself and not create what you really wanted. And maybe that has been a problem for artists since the beginning of art and the beginning of humanity. In my opinion, especially today, when there's so many options to do things, in my opinion, it is better, if it is possible, to have a side hustle, a side job that will be paying your bills, so that you don't have to, so that then you can create your art completely freely from the heart without tainting it with additional concerns about how market friendly it is, are people gonna like it, am I gonna be able to sell it, and so on. So at least this is the lifestyle that I found for myself. Well, I'm still finding it because I'm working very hard on my job right now, but hopefully this will allow me to have more and more time in the future for my art, because I don't want to complicate my artistic process with those concerns. I know some amazing artists that have found a way. So for example, there is an artist in California called Drew Brophy. He's a surfer artist, and he creates these amazing works, but he has found a niche with a particular people and so on, and I think that's pretty rare. And then I think there is something else that's also very important, is that when I said that something is missing out of the equation, so all the marketers are only considering two variables: you as an artist, content maker, and the audience. But I think there is a third variable, and that variable is that source of creativity itself. What I just said about not censoring it. Everybody who is an artist knows that in the process of creation there's a flow that goes through them, and you can call it whatever you want. Universal energy, universal creativity, even the will of God through you, through your words, or not God in a organized religion sense, but in the sense of higher intelligence. And so that creative flow goes through you and comes out, and you are a channel. And so the purer and the emptier in a way of a channel you are, the more fully this content will flow through you in its unadulterated form. So if you're concerned about money, and then the other thing, if you're concerned about what people will say, are you gonna get famous? Is this subject popular enough with people and nobody cares about it? So if you care about what this content is, you're sort of rejecting it. You're not able to fully transmit it. So I understand that this sounds sort of vague and separate from our material reality, where we have to pay bills and live and sustain ourselves and sustain other people. But at the same time, it is part of our funny, magical, incomprehensible world. And I think as an artist and as a creator, a writer, whatever, you feel much more inspired and much happier when you let this flow fully go through and when you really express yourself fearlessly. And I think that when you do this and when you're authentic and fearless, and of course you have something to say or something to show because it's based on your life experience and your suffering and everything you've learned and so on, then I think people will naturally be drawn to you, whoever resonates with this energy. So rather than going out and spending numerous hours on chasing people, marketing, learning every single marketing tool out there, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that's just one way of doing things. And I think a little bit of that is also great. But that's the way of like putting a humongous effort to chase people, kind of. And then the other way is to express yourself fully, unabashedly. You don't have a guarantee, you have to leave it to the universe, you have to trust the universe. So as you're doing it, you have absolutely no guarantee that something will happen and that somebody will tune in, but you still do it in this faith, in this belief that somebody will resonate. And even if they don't, because this is the pure energy that goes through you and you're expressing yourself, is still an incredibly joyful process. So it's still, even if nobody tuned in, you still feel a sense of incredible satisfaction and meaningfulness because you expressed yourself. You don't need people to acknowledge you, not to say, to praise you and so on, to feel meaningfulness. People don't give you your meaning. You yourself, your inner core, and expressing that and honoring that, that's your meaning. I know it sounds very uncomplimentary to the ego because the ego wants money, the ego wants fame, so this sounds like, so what, what the heck, so. But actually the process is incredibly joyful. I can't say whether that happens all the time. And if it happens, great, because it will mean that maybe you can build a life where you can also sustain yourself by doing something that is really authentic to you and you absolutely love. But even if that doesn't happen, then you still have that fullness of meaning, and then ideally you have a job separate from that, and the job is where you can learn all these marketing techniques and you can think about the audience and so on. But that's a job where you know that the goal is again to create value, because hopefully you're a good person, you want to create value for others, but also to sustain yourself, because that's the world we live in. We live in a world where Money is an intermediary between everything, between you and another person, between you and that vacation somewhere. So everything happens through money. There's no direct exchange, like I'm gonna give you like those videos, and if you feel good about it, you'll invite me to your villa for a few days to share a few days together, in your villa in Bali or something. So the second thing is something that I think about sometimes. What would if the world was like that? But right now that's not how the world works. The world works through money. And people are after the money because the money is a symbol of security, that you will be able to get those things that you want. Because in the second type of exchange, where it's I give you something from my heart, and from your heart you give me something back, then you don't have security that you will get something. It depends on the goodwill of others. And people don't want to depend on the goodwill. They want to be sure that they can get it. So for good or bad, that's the world we live in. This is one of the huge challenges and that I struggle with as an artist and creator. And I just wanted to share my thoughts. Please let me know what thoughts you have and experiences, and let's continue this conversation, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.